everyone. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Hi, my name is Ann McNeil, and I am the Master Wealth Builder, helping you to build a stronger and better life and business with this Think and Grow Rich mastermind philosophy and principles. And I'm very excited to be your host today as we talk about the principle of imagination. And as you might recall, if you've ever heard of this philosophy, that your creative and or synthetic imagination can create anything you desire. And so today we desire to host another masterclass. Yes, a masterclass. So we'll talk about that a little later on, but let me bring on my co-host, none other than Dr. Peter James. Good morning, Dr. Peter James. How are
Good,
you this morning?
good morning, good morning, good morning. My imagination is running wild this morning there, Ann McNeil. Very excited to be here with you and all of our guests and individuals who are watching and listening about what their imagination looks like, what it can look like, where it can lead them. My name is Dr. Peter A. James. I am the high performance coach helping you to shift your mindset. And today, I'm hoping you're shifting your mindset a little bit towards your imagination. And I like to think that imagination, there's two types it talks about in the text, but I like to think about it that it is the lead factor in my business, in my life, and even for the goals and the dreams that I have set forth for myself. We're going to talk today about what this imagination is at its core, but how it might develop for you and how it's developing, continue to develop for me. So, Ann McNeil, it's going to be a great show that we're going to have today. Looking forward for all of our listeners, our watchers to chime in to ask about what imagination is, what it can be, and what it looks like for them as well. It's going to be a good show.
Absolutely, absolutely. First, let's start off by talking about our special guest. Uh, Mr. Orrin will be our special guest next week. So, for those of you that's chiming in, let's make sure you come back next week. But today is your day because today we're hosting a masterclass, and we want to thank those of you that join in, especially those who come back every single week
Yeah.
and participate with us. And thank you, Renette Gordon and Doretha Dennis, and so many of you that continue to come on. But before we start anything else, let's talk about the 13 principles. And Peter, if you would share with our listeners, what are they and what they can do for each of us?
Yeah, so this book, first of all, again, if you have not purchased this book by now, Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill, with the backbone of what we're talking about on this show, you got to do that right now. You got to do that first and foremost. Order, Ann and I were talking about it before the show. Get it digitally if you need to, for sure. But in this text, these 13 principles that we go over every week, this month happens to be the imagination principle. But these 13 principles allow us to peer into all areas of our life, all areas of our business, all areas of our career from a unique perspective. This one just happens to be from the imagination perspective. And by peering into your life or your business or your career from all of these different angles, it allows you to almost, and I hate to say this, but it allows us to check the box to ensure that we're doing things the right way. And it's one of these books that we go back to on a regular basis and get those aha moments from. So, again, if you haven't picked it up, you got to go get it. But in the meantime, these 13 principles that we're about to watch demonstrate a lot about this book overall.
Number one is desire. Napoleon Hill said that everything starts with a burning desire, a compelling reason for doing what it is we do. Step two is faith, having belief in our ability to attain that which we desire. Step three is what we call autosuggestion. autosuggestion simply means being very intentional about the things that we are pouring into our thoughts, into our brains, and into our consciousness. Our brains, our minds will receive everything automatically, but we have to work extra hard to make sure that the positive things are what we are feeding ourselves, because those positive thoughts are going to turn into positive actions. Step number 4 is specialized knowledge. No one person knows everything, even about whatever their particular area of expertise might be. And the value of the MasterMind principle is using the specialized knowledge of other people. Step number 5 is imagination, the workshop of the mind. Everything starts with our imagination and our thoughts, the burning desire to transform those thoughts into our reality. In order to do that, we have to take a look at step 6, which is organized planning. That is how we crystallize our desire into action, organizing ourselves. Having the thought and not acting on the thought isn't going to get us anywhere. We have the thought, we go through the organized planning to transform that thought into action. Step number 7 is decision. What Napoleon Hill said is the mastery of procrastination. Napoleon Hill said that the antidote to procrastination is simply to make a decision and then move on that decision. Step 8 is persistence. We have to have a sustained effort which is induced by our faith in order to achieve our goals. One of Napoleon Hill's books I love, even the title, 3 Feet from Gold. Those people who became rich during the gold rush in the wild, wild west days didn't do that because they were necessarily smarter or had better information than anyone else. It's because they stayed just a little bit longer. Sometimes people left when they were just literally 3 feet from gold. So hanging in there, being persistent, is step number 8. Step number 9, the power of the mastermind, the driving force. None of us can accomplish anything on our own. Everybody, I don't care who you are, from the most prominent person to the person who might be considered the lowest on the totem pole, everybody has someone who helped them get to where they are. And the power of the mastermind is being able to use those influences around us, use the thoughts, use the knowledge, use the exploration of other people to help us in achieving our goal. Step number 10, the mystery of sex transmutation. This title can be a little confusing, but essentially what the mystery of sex transmutation means is that we oftentimes in our society think of sex as being purely physical. It is absolutely physical, but what Napoleon Hill teaches us is that sex also has an emotional element, and that sex is the strongest of our desires. That if we can take our sexual energy, transform that into positive, creative influences, it can propel us to new heights. And so we spend quite a bit of time talking about the mystery of step 10, which is sex transmutation. Step number 11 is the subconscious mind, which Napoleon Hill tells us is the connecting leap between our human mind and the infinite intelligence, the source of all thought, the source of all creativity. Conscious mind, we spent some time talking about how we use that through the influence of autosuggestion and what we're feeding into our mind. Step number 12, which is the brain, the broadcasting and receiving station of thought. Final step number 13, the sixth sense, the door to the temple of wisdom. This is the final step through which infinite intelligence may and will communicate voluntarily without any effort from or demands by the individual. The principle is the apex of the philosophy. It can be assimilated, understood, and applied only by first mastering the other 12 principles.
All right. Now you have it. Now you know the difference between all of these principles and what they can do for you. So let's go back to what Dr. James started sharing with us. And for those of you that is listening for the very first time, we're walking through the book, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And as we walk through the book, each month we discuss a different principle. This month, we're walking through the principle of your imagination. And our desire here is to help all of us understand by learning from these principles, how do you start with a desire? something you want so badly, and I like to call it you must have a dream to have a dream come true. But how do you go from that step to niching to be rich using your imagination along with the other principles in order to achieve that desire? So, Dr. James, we're going to start at the very beginning. Is that all right with you this morning?
That's good with me, and McNeil. I want to make sure that we acknowledge everyone who is chiming in as guests, as audience today. I see Colette, I see Imelda, Doretha, Dr. Raquel, Laverne, Gloria. Um, Lots of folks chiming in this morning. Thank you so much. We're talking about imagination today. I posed a question in the chat. I would love to hear. This is really serious. It might allow for a little bit of reflection there. And how
Yes.
are you allowing space for imagination in your life? Ooh. How are you allowing space for imagination in your life? Years ago, Ann McNeil challenged me to get up a little bit early in the morning. She doesn't remember this. Get up a little bit early in the morning to allow for quiet time. Maybe it's reading, maybe it's just some time with some tea, some time with some coffee in the morning, quiet, to allow your mind to wake up for sure, but also to utilize your imagination. And I've been doing that, and I'm very thankful for that because I'm allowing it to play a big role in my life moving forward. But Ann McNeil, I want to hear a little bit before we dive even deeper into our conversation. How do you allow imagination to manifest in your life?
Well, actually, Peter, I do an exercise every day. And for those of you that know me, we're in a Clarity MasterMind group together. And that encourages each of us to get up just a little bit earlier every day. And when I do that, I call it my daily date with myself, Peter. And on my daily date with myself, I have certain exercises that I do, literally physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional exercises. And one of those exercises that I do is I have a book that I wrote that's called Your Daily Date with Yourself. And the first few pages are just blank pages for me to journal my thoughts, whatever's top of mind. And that allows me to literally empty my mind of what's settling in my spirit that is sometimes inhibiting me from moving forward to pray, to read, to meditate.
Hmm.
So once I empty my mind first, then I am able to pray, praise, yes. For those of you that are familiar with Keisha Cobbs, which is my maiden name, Cobb, I listen to one of her 5-minute videos every single day, Peter. And while I'm listening, I am praising and worshiping, but then I'll listen to another different 5-minute video of hers, and I am doing yoga exercises, just 5 minutes. But I find that by doing that and getting the body moving, the mind moving, the spirit moving, now I am ready to settle down and allow my imagination to work. Actually, Peter, my imagination starts working in a lot of this. And what I will do oftentimes, and I'm so
Mhm.
glad we're discussing this, this is
Yeah.
powerful for me. Oftentimes, what I will do is I will stop and write whatever is coming up for me. And this is just my daily date with myself, how I use my imagination. Once I'm done with that, I settle down and then I begin to write
Mm.
gratitude. What am I thankful for? What am I grateful for? Because I began to realize, Peter, that many years ago, I would pray for things like my payroll. My payroll went from $1,000 to $5,000 a week to 10,000 to 20 a week
Wow.
to 50. Yes, 60, 70, $80,000 a week. Now, I didn't have it. And I found myself literally every single day, how am I going to collect these payables? Because I've never been able to borrow money. My credit's been so bad. I've
Mhm.
never borrowed any money. So now how am I going to get this money every single week? And then all of a sudden I began to realize that it was no longer an issue. Now, I want everybody to get this.
Mm-hmm.
I pray for the payroll. God bless me every single week after week, month after month, year after year. Now, this is what I call the desires of my heart. I am writing the desires of my heart every single day, and I'm praying. But it's like lifting. I don't know if you lift weights, Peter. You do look like you lift weights?
Oh,
Okay.
thank you very much there, McNeil. Appreciate that.
You're welcome. You're welcome. The weights of the mind, the body, and the spirit.
Right, right.
Okay. So I'm lifting these weights every day, mental, spiritual, emotional weights, right? They're called challenges, problems, struggles, all these things.
Yeah.
But then I was convicted. Now, we're still talking about the imagination now, all right? Then I was convicted, Peter, because eventually, week after week, not only was I able to make the payroll, but I was able to save a little something
Mm-hmm.
from my company payroll, because my goal was to save at least a week payroll in advance, then 2 weeks, then 3 weeks payroll in advance by setting aside a small amount of money so I could have a breather. This is where the conviction came. Eventually, I'm writing this every day as my imagination exercise as part of my daily date with myself.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized, Peter, it was no longer a prayer, but I'd never gone back to say thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So in my journal, I began to write the desires of my heart. Thank you for the desire of my heart. And then I would state what the desire was that God had achieved for me. Now, why is the imagination? How does the imagination come into play here? Every single one of us have challenges and problems. It is through ideas. And we talked about this earlier, Peter, where we talked about it is through the hunches and the
Mm-hmm.
inspirations that we get,
Yeah.
right? But do we have a plan of action to use the creative, and the book says synthetic imagination, right? He tells us that creative imagination is through this imagination that the infinite mind of man has direct communication with infinite intelligence. So it is through these hunches, these inspirations, these thoughts, and these ideas that we get, but we don't act on them. This is what I'm suggesting,
Mm-hmm.
how you begin to move from creative imagination to synthetic imagination. Because for me, I'll use my payroll. I had to use my imagination and say, okay, next week, how are you going to collect these outstanding receivables to ensure you have money for next week and then next month? Then I use what I call as a part, again, going back to your question, you're asking me, how do I use my imagination?
Yeah.
Daily, Peter, daily, and even to this date, I take a sheet of paper. Actually, I have it right here. And I will write the word opportunities. This is in my journal. And I write from 1 to 10 on the page. And I will sit there and ask my mind and the spirit to give me ideas. Remember now, your imagination is activated through ideas. And so this is how I do it, Peter. I write them 1 through 10, and then I sit there and I come up with ideas and thoughts of how I will create from this opportunity the realization. And sometimes it takes months, years, but I write every day. I write
Yeah.
those from 1 to 10 every day. So that's how I do it.
I love that. I love that. You had me thinking a whole lot of stuff. How are you doing? First of all, you had me thinking, and Renette had put this in the chat as well. She put that every morning. Where is it in the chat? I saw that about how she journals to capture my creative ideas. When I walk or I pray, I get my ideas. I'm leaving space in the mornings for me to be able to think freely. Those of you who get up in the morning right away and you're on your social media or you're on your phone listening to something or having the news inundate you, I wonder if we're not careful enough oftentimes about what we are listening to, what is playing in the background that prevents imagination, whether creative or synthetic, to be manifest. Ooh, that's really powerful there, right?
Deep,
Because
deep,
sometimes, oftentimes
deep.
in the morning, from the time we wake up to the time we go to sleep, we are being inundated with messages from everywhere. Social media, the news, marketers, ads. Are we intentionally leaving space for the quiet, for us to journal? I need to journal more. I'm leaving space for quiet. I'm not writing them down. I'm not intentional about it. I write them down indirectly. I need to be more direct and intentional about my journaling, even as you've described there, Anne. But I wonder if we can even continue to do a better job with that, because listen, all these businesses, all these marketers, their goal is to inundate your mind with subliminal messages that will get you to spend money.
Yes.
How are we influencing our own mind, influencing our own imagination to be creative, to come up with ways, as in Anne's case, to overcome a financial hurdle for her business, or overcome a financial hurdle for your own life, or just manifest whatever you desire for your own life, whatever you can imagine, create, right? It's in you. Are you allowing space for it overall?
Well, I
So
think we should
I can even do a better job, Anne.
I agree. I think we should also ask those of you that's listening, and can you put in the chat one thing that you do to exercise your creative imagination? I also want to remind those of you that may just be coming in that
Mhm.
our special guest, Orrin Hudson, will be with us next week. He was not able to make it today. Let us know this morning. So we're letting you know this morning he will be with us next week. But you are with us today, and you are all our special guests because today is a master class. And
Yes.
so we want to thank all of you, Miss Riley, Imelda, all of you that come on every Saturday. And then some of you that are very new, please remember this is for you. And what we'd also encourage you to do is put your questions in the chat that you may have for us or for the audience that you would like for us to discuss. This is a dialogue, it's not a monologue. And it's a dialogue between all of us, not just Peter and myself, but all of us. And that is the value and the benefit of a masterclass. Thank you, Dr. Rubin. You are always here, Laverne. All of you, thank you so much for joining. But let's go back to the question. And while we're doing that, in terms of the question, I do want to also remind you, please remember to comment, like, and share the show. But also, if you have not subscribed to this podcast, please, right now on YouTube, just click subscribe, complete the information so that you can get the reminder. We are here literally live and in person. Yes, 52 weeks out of the year. And thankfully, there's not just one of us or two of us, but there's three of us. And so every week you will have some support here, as we call this a Think and Grow Rich mastermind, but it's for accountability. I have to say that because, again, we're here to support you by walking through and dealing with these principles and how do they relate to you in your life. So with that thought in mind, any questions from the audience you have for us, please put it in the chat. All right. So Peter, I want to go back to something we were talking about before the podcast started. I asked you about your daughter.
Yes.
And I asked if your daughter, good morning, Burcorp LLC. Good morning to you too. Thank you. And Laverne Blackwood. Good morning, Laverne. Welcome. Yes, our special guest this morning, Miss Laverne Blackwood. Thank you, Laverne. We were talking about your daughter this morning, and I asked you if she would be able and available to join us the last Saturday in June.
Yes.
And we're hosting a financial empowerment seminar in Dallas for the youth.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we're talking about imagination, creative and synthetic imagination. So I'm bringing Peter's in our conversation. Thank you, Gloria. I pray first, read something inspirational, exercise, and walk. When I do this, ideas come forth. Now, my question for you, and I'm going to come back to my point though, Gloria, once you have the ideas, where do you record them? Because one of the areas of this principle that the author tells us is that once we have ideas, we want to jot them down, but also in order to manifest that idea, then it requires us to create a plan of action. Once you create that plan of action, it requires us to have a mastermind group of accountability to hold us accountable on that plan.
Mm-hmm.
So if you would share with us. Now I want to go back to Peter's daughter. We're hosting a Better Investing annual conference in Dallas the last Saturday of June. Peter and I were talking about his daughter, who's a part of our youth mastermind group, coming to that event on that Saturday. But as we began to discuss it, it dawned on me that the founder of Better Investing used his creative imagination to create a place for regular people like you and I not to have to pay an arm and a leg to invest, but equally as important, to learn how to analyze stocks and learn how to invest. Now, why is that important here? Because this is an example, and we can all look around wherever you're sitting, look around wherever you are, every single thing. I'm in a hotel, and I'm looking at a large screen TV. It was an idea somebody had.
Mm-hmm.
They used synthetic imagination to mix a lot of different things together and came up with. Now, many of you may remember when you would go to a hotel, you'd have that box, right? Remember that box that used to sit on the desk? What happened to that box with those antennas? What happened is somebody had a better idea and then a better idea. Now we're using these for the TV, right? So how do you take the ideas that you have and manifest that into reality? And Imelda says, when I'm walking, I get creative ideas, journaling as well. My problem is, thank you, Imelda, for being, yes. She said, my problem is I don't always take action. Now, if I can help you, and this is something I'm learning, this device can help you.
Mm-hmm.
You can create notes. You can create voice notes. And what I'm learning is that oftentimes I will get $1 million. Okay, how about $1 billion idea? So Peter, can I share my $1 billion idea?
I'm like, look, I'm sure everyone's going to start writing it down, but go ahead. Absolutely.
All right. Again, I have to respect those of you that may have just come on.
Yeah.
You know, I want to be fair. I want to respect those of you that just come on. And maybe you didn't come to listen to Peter and I today. Maybe you came to listen to our special guest, Orrin Hudson. He'll be here next week. But since you're here, we want to challenge you to think about how do you use your imagination. Now, let's go back to what our friend and mastermind accountability partner Imelda said. Honestly, she said, I have these ideas, but I don't take action.
Right.
Creative ideas come from the infinite intelligence. It's like a streaming of consciousness, right? But synthetic ideas is when you take something that already exists and you put your spin on it. Okay. Now, something that I saw, Peter, over and over and over again, all of you've seen it. If you've read the book, can you put in the chat for me if you read this part of the book? If you read the section in the book where Napoleon Hill talks about the fact that Andrew Carnegie hired Charles Schwab. He paid Charles Schwab $70,000 a year as a salary, but he paid him $1 million as a bonus. Now, for those of you that's on YouTube, I need you to put in the chat, I read that. Now, I'm waiting to see if you read that. Now, I read it too, over and over and over and over and over and over. But let's talk about what happened after that. And this is I think it's an excellent example of synthetic imagination.
Mhm.
But how do you act on it? One day, about 10 years ago, as I was reading the same thing, I read further where he said, Charles Schwab had an idea, a hunch, an inspiration. And the idea was to go to Carnegie and convince Carnegie and all of the financiers during that day to pull together all of these miscellaneous manufacturers of steel. You read that, Morris? Yes, Angelina read it. Okay, great. All right, the rest of you, Renette, she says she read it. Audiobook. You listen to it on audiobooks. But we get the point. We get the point. Charles Schwab had an idea, an inspiration, a thought, a hunch. And this is what it was. Maybe I'll do a test. Does anybody remember what the idea was? Put that in the chat. While you're putting it in the chat, I'm going to continue with the story. His idea was to pull together all of these small manufacturers of steel and put them up underneath what he called one roof, if you will. That one roof was called United Steel. But when he came up with the idea, he shared it at what the media called a $1 billion dinner speech. Now, Peter, your head should go up and down like this.
Right.
Yeah, okay, you remember.
Yes.
Now, what do you do with that? So what? Is this something in the book? He had an idea, $1 billion dinner speech. Well, after reading this over and over and over and over and over, I realized that if he could do that, so could I. And I started thinking about how I could take the same idea he took. I could pull together in my industry of construction. I could pull together the wealthiest people in construction. That's what he did, right? This is synthetic imagination. This is an example of how you do it.
Yes.
So I just started writing every day an idea or two or three, an idea, and then an action. So Imelda, I want to encourage you. All you have to do, you're not going to work on all the ideas at the same time, but pick one. And if I can give you one, like this idea that you have, that's called Imelda's Fashions. If you just wrote one thing per day, even if you didn't do it entire 365, just one thing a day, you wrote an idea, an action to act on that idea. So that's what I did, Peter. Now I took the idea and I said, what if I pull together the wealthiest people in my industry of construction, sector construction, but focused on an industry and did $1 billion luncheon, not a dinner, but using synthetic imagination, taking his idea, putting a spin on it for myself to benefit not just me, but my clients, Peter.
Right.
And I came up with this idea to do it for up underneath. For myself, I started doing it hold up, let's be clear. Let's be clear. I'm a business owner. I started with the idea for myself, saying, how do I increase my business and focus on $1 billion programs and stop focusing on these small projects? I'm a small business owner, but just because I am small, Peter, I don't have to think small. And Think and Grow Rich is helping me with self-confidence to elevate my thinking, right? So I started just focusing my own business on clients that were focusing on $1 billion programs. Peter, I did that for about 5 years straight. And all of a sudden I began to realize, thank you, Morris Temple. He says, my personal journals, thoughts as they come. For more focused intent, imagination, a dark, silent place, blinders, and earplugs. Oh, I like that. If necessary, to listen and role play through what is needed or desired. I love that. Thank you. Because again, like Peter said, getting up a little earlier before everybody else in the house gets up makes a big difference. And Laverne Dorsey says, I use my phone to record voice notes. Yes, Imelda, that's an idea. I have learned that it is important to take some type of immediate action toward that inspiration. Yes, voice notes, the documented notes and a journal, whatever works for you, take action. So let me wrap up this story before it's time to wrap up. Right? So, Peter, I used it for myself. And then I began to come up with ideas as I talked with my mastermind. Laverne is in my mastermind at work. Kendi Ward is in my mastermind at work. I'm in their mastermind. We're in a mastermind together called Work. Carolyn Modest. And we discuss things every single week, certain time, every single week, 12 o'clock every Monday. But years ago, when I started this idea of $1 billion luncheon, I would take my clients to lunch. I would take my clients to lunch, Peter, and I would begin to focus on $1 billion programs in aviation, and then in water, and then in healthcare. And all of a sudden, I began to realize that my self-confidence went up, my clientele went up, my relationships went up, and my profit went up. And then I began to realize I can share this with anybody else who wanted to do the same. Then I began to invite my friends from the National Association of Black Women in Construction. And we in Miami would have a face-to-face luncheon, Peter, with the client's client for these $1 billion programs. Now, I'm going into a little depth and detail here because I want everybody to understand, how do you go from a creative hunch using synthetic imagination with a plan and an action and a mastermind group of accountability? One idea. That's just one idea. And so often I think, Peter, we come and we sit and we listen, but we don't do. And thank you, Imelda, so much. We don't do. But why is it that we don't do? I contend there's no accountability.
Let's stay on that. Let's stay on that a little bit, though, Anne, because I'm going to go back and come right back to that, because many of you who are listening and watching right now have had ideas, have had thoughts, have had this synthetic imagination of, even as Anne has just described, it might have been a little bit big, grandiose, and because of its bigness, you have hesitated to step into it, right? You've hesitated because Anna even mentioned it. Her self-confidence preceded the outcomes. So now you have these ideas, but you're hesitant to step into it. Why? For fear of what? Embarrassment, that it won't succeed, whatever the case may be. Step into it. We talk about this synthetic imagination. So Anne just described, she came up with this idea that wasn't her own, but she made it her own. We've talked about this before. Lyft and Uber came up with an idea that really wasn't their own. They just brought them together, the app and the taxi services, and made what you all use on your phone right now. What are some, and right now we even talking about synthetic imagination that you can bring together, maybe that someone else is doing, maybe it's someone you have read somewhere, that you can adjust it to make it more of your own, to do big things with it. This imagination is important, so important. This surrounding ourselves with others, this reading, this quiet time is so important. I think about that, and I mentioned this before. I am my most creative when I'm on an airplane, because there's not a lot. I turn the music off. There's not, I don't want to buy the Wi-Fi because it's spotty, right? And I write. I write I write articles. I write a lot of stuff. Or I read. I'll read or I write because it's a that hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, and I'm on the plane. That's like sacred for me. I actually look forward to that just so I can jot down some stuff and write out a whole lot of things and take action ideas and take action on them, make outlines, but also do them. What Ann also described is that after you finish creating this stuff, this synthetic imagination, it's important now to step into it. But stepping into it without letting anybody else know about it, it's easier to set yourself up for not completing it. So Ann had also mentioned the accountability partners. So Ann, I know you know so much about accountability. Can you give us some examples of how you've created accountability in your life? What some events that you've created around that?
Well, I know that was a setup. And like my friend Dr. Willie Jolly says, a setup uh, is sometimes seen as a setback.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, setup is sometimes seen as a setback, but you've got to have creative imagination to turn that. You got to have creative imagination to turn that. We host an annual meeting of accountability, Peter. That's how we do it. But first, before I talk about the annual meeting of accountability, and if we can bring up the JPEG, I want to challenge all of you. We host a beta test every single month. The second, yes, here we go. Internationalmasterminders.com/group mastermind. You can go there and register to join us once a month on Tuesday at 9 a.m. if you can make it. And what we do is we talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of an accountability group or the lack thereof. Many mastermind groups don't hold you accountable. They just let you come and talk or, listen, there are a lot of mastermind groups, some paid, some unpaid. Whatever you do works for you, you continue to do that. But what our desire is to create a platform. For right now, it is free. Let me say it again, free for right now, but I also know we don't respect what we don't pay for. But right now it is free. And what we do is we come on and we talk about some of the best practices, like having an accountability buddy. That's a best practice. Having an agenda for your meeting. That's a best practice. Setting a policy where you have to sign an agreement like ethics, where you're not going to share what goes on in that meeting. That's a practice. Those are just a couple of practices that we hold dear and we implement as a part of our Think and Grow Rich Mastermind Accountability Beta Test program. Now, our annual meeting, Peter, we have an annual meeting for your life. And I just want to share this. We help you go through, focus on, set goals in 10 different areas of your life. Your business is only one of those areas. And I say that because for a long time, I thought my name was the name of my business. I thought my name was MCO Construction because I didn't have a life. That's my confession. But we help you set goals or encourage you to set goals in your spiritual, your family, your financial, your health, your education, your personal development, the business and or career, your recreational, your creativity, and your civic area of your life. We encourage you to set these goals for 6 months, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. And right now, personally, I'm in my 40th year of this process. Now, I will say to everybody, I don't like doing this. Let's get that out in the open, Peter. I don't like this level of accountability. But I tell you what I love. I love having the privilege to honor and the opportunity to do what I want, when I want, where, with whom, as long as I want. And money is not an issue. It was not always like that, Peter. But from doing this every single day, and everybody may not want to be held accountable to that level. I didn't at first, but I am so honored to serve. And so by serving, Peter, we have to give.
Yep.
So that's it. January the 6th and 7th, 2023. We will be in Boca Raton, Florida. You can go to the Think and Grow Rich International Masterminders.com website. It is called International Masterminders.com website. And you can register there to participate with us. And like I said, Peter and his family have joined us, Laverne and her family, and many of you listening in. And Imelda has challenged us as a part of our Clarity Mastermind to encourage all of the members of our Clarity Mastermind group to bring your mastermind buddies and your partners with you in 2023 when you come. So those are the details of the accountability, Peter. And
Yeah.
if you'd like to share, how do you
Yeah.
hold yourself accountable?
Yeah. Yeah. Galen Bingham asked me those hard questions there, Ann McNeil. But let's go back a little bit. Let's go back to that synthetic imagination, right? You have an idea, you you don't want to share it, but okay, you decide to. You share it with someone who you know can hold you accountable. Here's why it's so important. Here's why it's so powerful. Because even Ann said a little while ago, I don't like it. It's uncomfortable. But listen, everyone, what big things in life don't happen or what big things in life happen without discomfort? Let me say that again. Let me just even say it more straightforward. And all of you know this. There has to be a great level of discomfort for magic to happen, for an idea to be created, to be manifest, right? And that discomfort for me is someone saying to me, okay, you said you were going to do this by this date.
Yes.
What happened? What got in the way?
Yes.
What prevented you from moving forward? How do you make sure that doesn't happen again? Right? Most of us don't want that. We just rather have it fizzle away or no one say anything because I'm an adult. I don't need nobody. I don't need anybody to hold me accountable. That's what we think in our subconscious to a certain extent. But by stepping into that, again, you've had this synthetic imagination, you have this idea, this creation now, who is saying, who is supporting, who is holding you accountable to get this done for your benefit, for nobody else's benefit but yours. But even though it's for our own benefit, we still don't want to step into that. What's that about? And maybe it's that fear.
Yes.
Maybe it's the embarrassment. Maybe we feeling like I don't need that accountability. But I promise you, most success stories, most of them, actually, I'll probably say all of them. I'll go on a limb. All of them have
Oh.
some level of accountability attached to them.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yes, I would definitely say all. Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
wow. And that power. And I'm talking about the big ideas, the ideas that you use on a regular basis that are making a ton of money and they're not your ideas. The Ubers, the apps, going to Target or Walmart, whatever the case may be, there was accountability. Disney, we talked about Disney before we got here, and McNeil, which is
Yes.
all about imagination.
Yes.
And now we're scheduling vacations around it. All of this is actually, as Ann had mentioned, when we have the setup, all of this is set up for you.
Yes.
And you could use it as a setup or a setback.
Yes.
Which one are you choosing? Wow.
Wow. Both saying wow at the same time. I just
know, right?
I just want to I want to read something that Laverne said here.
Yeah.
She said, I read articles and books every morning and use the ahas to share words of motivation on my Facebook page. I don't always share it, but I've but I've been asked to do so more often.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'd like to encourage all of us to do is take action. That's an action that she's taking. That's the first. That's the first step in taking an action. Now, I would encourage all of us, and I'll even challenge us. Once you take that action, then what's next? And then what's next? And then what's next? Drill down into that aha. Drill down into that thought. Drill down into that impulse of thought and create a plan. That's what the book tells us in the imagination chapter. I think it's on page 90. I think it's on page 92. If you give me a second, let's go there. We have a moment. I can read this. Do we have a moment?
Just a moment. Just a moment. We are
All right.
drawing close to our time.
Okay.
Go ahead. Yeah.
How about a minute? How about a minute? Can I get a minute?
You can get a minute.
I was telling Peter, my book is so raggedy and torn up. It's literally in pages. It's falling out. So bear with me. He told me to get the electronic version. I said, I have that too, but it's not the same. It's not all marked up and
Touch it.
Yes, I gotta touch it. So if I can just read this.
Yeah, please.
Okay. So for those of you, I feel like a passage here. So those of you will go to listen, Galen, we miss you this morning because often he will say that passage. If you go to that passage on page 93, if you have the same book that we're using, on page 93, the author says that desire is only a thought and impulse. It is nebulous. It is abstract and of no value until, here you go, until it has been transformed into its physical counterpart. While the synthetic imagination is the one which will be used most frequently in the process of transforming an impulse of desire into money, you must keep in mind the fact that you may face circumstances and situations which may demand the use of creative imagination as well. And I wanted to just go on and just share that. He goes on to talk about that you must have a plan of action. That's where I want to go. So for all of us that have these ideas, these thoughts, these inspirations, these hunches, go to the next step with the plan. Now, part of the challenge that many of us have put in the chat is you may not have an accountability partner or an accountability group called a mastermind group. That's the only, I would contend that's one of the main factors that's holding you back. Because if you have, when you get a mastermind group, make sure you're reaching up like-minded and like-spirited people who are going to hold you accountable, not reaching down and saying, I know this person needed, that person needed, let me put them in my group. They're not like-minded. They're not like-spirited. Say that.
Very important.
Well, that's what we do. And this goes back to our self-confidence. I'm not going to get into that today, but we associate with people at the level of our self-confidence. Let's put a pin in that.
Yeah. Let me piggyback on that. We often want to identify someone who has an accountability partner who's not ready. Right. So now, how can you identify someone who's on the same trajectory as you are, if not better, to be that individual? That's huge, right? Because we can't, trying to make someone our accountability partner sounds like a recipe for disaster.
Okay. Yeah. All right. I think I want to drop the mic and wrap up there.
Please,
because you just stepped on my toe. My baby toe at that. I gotta level up some relationships here.
Ooh, wow.
This is deep. You see, because what the author is telling us is that And he tells you to go back to the beginning of the book, reread this chapter. Because when you have an idea and you level up and you surround yourself with like-minded, like-spirited people at the next level up in their self-confidence, and especially people who are experts in whatever your idea is, then iron sharpens iron. Remember, iron cannot sharpen paper. Iron sharpens iron. And going back to Dr. Peter's point, if you're connecting with people in your mastermind group and bringing them to your mastermind group that are not like-minded and like-spirited in the craft, in the niche, in the expertise that you need to go to the next level, he calls it a recipe for disaster. So you just stepped on my toe. Okay, let me get him off my toe by wrapping up.
We got a few minutes.
Yeah, no, we have a second to wrap up, and I don't want to go over. So Tamika says, what Peter said is so true. So he stepped on your toe too, huh? I think that's my cue so that I can use my creative imagination. Yes, challenge ourselves. Thank you, Renette. I need to use my creative imagination and my synthetic imagination to get me another group, Peter. I think I need to get in another mastermind.
Listen, while you are reflecting on that, I love that quote by Laverne. You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, by Jim Rohn.
Yes.
I tell a lot of my clients about that. And those of you who are listening or watching, you are the average of your 5 closest friends or family. Listen, don't get rid of your family, but ask yourself, how do I need to expand my network? Right? And that's the aha. That may be a big aha moment for all of us today. How can you be held accountable by someone who is outside of your network, who may not be filling that role right now for you?
Now, it's interesting you said that. And Gloria Riley said, I agree with the accountability partnering. And leveling up mastermind group. She and I actually had a conversation yesterday. We met at the WOW Women of Wealth conference in the Hamptons, and we were talking about this whole idea that your network with a K and your net worth are related.
They are so related. Say that again, and really slow, because everyone needs to hear that who's listening or watching.
Yes, your network with the K and your net worth are closely related. And I would intend to call that your mastermind group of accountability. So Dr. James, if you would share with our audience who you are, what you do, and how can you add value to them as we wrap up, because we can go. And again, if you joined a little late, we want to remind you that our special guest, Orrin Hudson, was not here today. He'll be here next week. So for those of you that came on just to hear him, we are so glad and honored that you were here to share with us today as our masterclass. But join us again next week. But remember to comment, like, and share the show, but also subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we will see you back here next week. But Dr. James is going to tell you about himself, and then I'll wrap up.
We dropped some bombs in these last few minutes here, Ann McNeil. My name is Dr. Peter A. James. You can find me on any social media platform at Dr. Peter A. James, at DrPeterAJames, especially on LinkedIn, however. Highly recommend you. Actually, because I'm starting to depart some of the other ones, but that's another story for another time. You can also find me at shiftyourmindset.com, shiftyourmindset.com, which is, please stay in touch. Please reach out to me. Please, let's continue to have this conversation. Ann McNeil, love this conversation.
Yes. I just want to also mention something that Ray said. He said, I think I overanalyze. And that is so true for so many of us. But I would challenge you, Ray, get an accountability partner, because oftentimes they will help, even that out. And yes, they'll help even that out. Again, we want to thank all of you for joining us. You have been listening to the Think and Grow Rich Mastermind Live Masterclass. We thank you for participating with us today. My name is Ann McNeil, and I am the Master Wealth Builder, helping you to build a stronger and better life and business. And I do that through the utilization of these principles for success. If you are looking for greater clarity in the achievement of your goals, you can connect with me by going to annmcneil.com/coaching and join our Clarity Mastermind group. And that's the McNeil Factor Clarity Mastermind group. Only if you are willing to have a desire, something you want to achieve, is this group beneficial for you. If you don't have a desire yet, this may not be the place for you. It may not be the place for you. But again, you can go to annmcneil.com/coaching. Please remember to comment, like, and share this podcast and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And until next week, Dr. James, with that awesome smile. Doesn't he have an awesome smile?
I'm just thinking, I wonder what everyone's going to do with all these great bombs that were dropped today. I wonder what they're going to do with
Well,
it.
let's ask them the question. We're right at the top of the hour. So as an accountability partner, can you put in the chat? Now, remember now, this is recorded, and whatever you put in the chat,
Oh, you just
your accountability partner.
scared them away now.
Yes. Dropped a lot of bombs, nuggets this morning. Thank you. Renee says the master classes always challenge me, but what are you going to do? Dr. James is challenging us. Let's take one moment and give all of you a chance, because one of the things Gloria say, take action. You got to put it in the chat, Gloria. Take action on what? Give us one idea. Okay, Gloria, you can take action by joining the Clarity Mastermind. Okay, if you're not a part, Dr. Rubin, you can join our Clarity Mastermind. I was sharing with Dr. Imelda Wallace yesterday. She hosted our Friday Think and Grow Rich accountability call. She did a phenomenal job. And the question was asked of me, what did I want her and the group to hold me accountable for? And I had to confess. I said, every week I come on and I say, I want to get one new person to join the Clarity Mastermind. But then I had to confess and realize I wasn't doing that because I wasn't asking. And so I made a commitment to them, Dr. Wallace and the others that join us every Friday, 7 a.m. on the Think and Grow Rich Friday accountability call. Hint, hint. I said that I'm going to start asking all of you specifically. I need to ask 5 people a day, and all of you are part of my 5. So if you're not already a part of our Clarity Mastermind, I have to ask 5 people a day. So you're my 5 today. Dr. Rubin, I'm asking you. Renette, you are. Dr. James, I'm asking you. I have to do 5 a day. Tamika, Miss Therese DeBose, Gloria Riley, all of you. So that's 4 for today. I got to do one more before today is over. Now, I say that humorously, but it's so powerful because we have not, because we ask not, Ann McNeil. So I'm sharing, and I said this yesterday. I tell my clients this all the time, and I have to tell myself and do the same thing that I ask my clients to do. I know that if I ask 5 people a day, one person is going to say maybe, but in a week, one person will say yes. So again, my name is Ann McNeil, and you can definitely connect with us every single Saturday at 8 a.m. No matter what, no matter who shows up and who don't. We know we will be here, at least one of us. And until next week, everybody, I think we have too much fun. It was just the 2 of us. So hint, hint. Everybody, we will see you next week. This has been such an honor, and you all have blessed this masterclass today. And it is always, remember, it's a dialogue. It's not a monologue. We love you, and we will see you next week. Peace.